Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Kathy Goughenour, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your schedule to join us. I'm super excited about our time together. So, like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, I'd like to start with where you're born, go all the way up to today, and then we can talk about the amazing things that you're doing with your VA expert training, okay? Awesome.
Sounds great.
Thank you for being here. So, where were you born?
So, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you grow up there?
I actually grew up in what is now famous Ferguson, Missouri.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It is famous now for not so good reasons, but it's famous.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's where I grew up. And if anybody's listening that knows anything about the St. Louis area, nothing matters there except where you went to high school.
Yeah.
So I went to McClure High School, if there's any St. Louisans listening.
There you go.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
My grandmother.
Okay. Why?
Yeah. Her name was Goldie Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to ask her, what's your middle name? And she said, I don't have a middle name. Goldie Brown, ask me again, I'll tell you the same. Have no middle name, ask me again, I'll tell you the same.
Yeah.
So she was very important to me because she was a total character. She grew up in the Depression, and her first husband jumped a train and left her with a child. And she found out by her neighbor saying, I saw your husband jump a train today.
Wow.
And that was it. Yeah. So that's a rough life back then. Right?
No kidding.
Yeah. And she was the most loving person I have ever known. She truly gave me unconditional love. Yeah. And I needed it because my mother did not want me and tried to abort me and told me about it my entire life. Did not want you or your brother. You ruined my life. On her deathbed, she says, never have children. And I'm like, I got that message a long time ago, Mom.
Wow.
So she would leave me and my brother at my grandmother's house the beginning of every summer, after school's over, all summer long. And we just had a great time and really felt very loved.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now, another really interesting thing, and a thing that really shaped my life, is that I was a double preacher's kid. Both my father and my mother were ministers. Yes.
What?
Yes. So my father
Hold on. Just, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Let me. Okay. What?
I know. That's why I'm as crazy as I am.
Well, I don't have a problem with you being crazy, but oh my goodness.
Yeah. So my father was an Assembly of God minister.
Yeah.
And when he was 29, I was 8. He was killed by a drunk driver in a head-on collision. Oh. And my mother took over the church because when he was killed, and I don't know much about that religion, but you live in a parsonage that you do not own. You live there for free. So when he was killed, we didn't have a place to live or anything.
Yeah, you're homeless.
Didn't take over the church. Yeah. And my mother didn't have a high school education. She didn't know how to drive a car. So she took over the church and ministered there for a couple of years. And then she started running around with the deacon's son. And we kind of got run out of town.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, this was more of a twist than I thought we were going to have. So I had a guy that started a company on earlier today that I told you about that started making scotch, and they sent me a bottle. I might have to break it out before this interview goes.
I think that's a really good idea.
Wow, we might have to have a drink together. Okay.
Sounds good.
Wow. So, okay. So I'm sorry about your dad, and I'm super
Thank
sorry
you.
about your mom. I mean, this is like, wow. So, and this all happened in Ferguson?
No. When I was born in St. Louis,
Gotcha.
but then we moved. My father started a church in a little tiny town in southern Missouri. It's called Mountain Grove.
Okay.
And then he was killed. And then we moved back to St. Louis. My mom moved us back to St. Louis and Ferguson. Yes.
After she got run out of town, basically.
Right. So born in St. Louis, moved just for a couple of years to Mountain Grove. My dad was killed. My mom did a couple of years as the minister there, and then we moved back to St. Louis.
So you moved back to St. Louis. This is a wild story. So you moved back to St. Louis, and what happens then?
So my mother and so I was about 10 when we moved back to St. Louis.
Okay.
And my mother had met a man who both of them were very, very, very much alike. They were very selfish people who didn't want children. They both had children. His wife had died. My mom's husband had died. So they met up, and they were just like instant soulmates because they didn't want kids. So they essentially just pretended like they didn't have any. So I had me and my brother and my 2 step siblings. We all lived together in Ferguson, and we were there were 4 of us, but 2 of us were 14 and 2 of us were 13. So we were all born within 18 months of each other, and we're step siblings. And my mom and dad really liked my stepdad. I'm just going to call him my dad from now on. My mom and my dad really liked to go out to eat. So they went out to eat every meal, and they would give me $25 and drop me off at the grocery store and let me buy whatever I wanted for us to eat. So I bought Frosted Flakes, bologna, and Suzy Q's. And that's what we lived on as kids.
Wow.
It's a true story. I know it's hard to believe. When
It
we
really
had a
is.
little extra
It really
money,
is hard to believe. It's hard to even fathom. But okay, I'm following.
When we had a little extra money, we would buy Hamburger Helper, and oh my gosh, we just thought we were in heaven. Hamburger Helper. It was really, but you just make do. I didn't know any difference.
Right.
I really didn't.
You thought everybody grew up that way.
Yeah, I did. The only money that we got as kids were lunch money to go to school.
Yeah.
We go to school with our lunch money, and I saved my lunch money so that I could buy whatever I needed. Because there were no Christmas presents, no nothing. My mom didn't like Christmas. She's this, religious. Her and my dad would go sing at churches all the time. They were General Baptist by now, Southern Baptist. And they would go sing at churches and stuff, and everybody just thought they were amazing. And us kids were at home with very little to eat and nobody to supervise us or care about us. And if you asked for something, for Christmas or whatever, no, they didn't have time for any of that. So, yeah, I thought that's how everybody grew up. I didn't know.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so
made me very strong.
So you went to McClure High School. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Made you strong, right?
Yeah.
So you go to McClure High School. Do you have a favorite subject at McClure?
Yeah. And that's actually Ferguson Junior High School is where I met my best friend. Her name's Patty, and I'm at her house right now. We have been best friends since we were 14, and we're now both 67. So it's just a wonderful friendship that we've had all these years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Sometimes you just meet somebody that you connect with forever,
That's
and
true.
Her mom and dad were just really great people. And I essentially lived at her house, and her mom and dad they were the ones that let me borrow their, get my driver's license. And when there were events at high school where it's, mom and daughter, her mom would take me with her. And so it was just, and her mom's still alive, and I still call her my mom.
Yeah.
She's just a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Oh,
So I've had a lot of good people in my life. Just unfortunately, my mom wasn't one of them.
well, but
So
it's kind of your life's kind of an example of the power of community,
yes,
you
it
know,
definitely is.
and all of us sort of pulling for each other and helping each other.
Right. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you needed support at a certain time, and they stepped up, and wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it is.
Bless
It's
her
really
heart.
nice. Yeah. So in high school, I would say English was probably my favorite
Yeah.
subject. But goofing off was really my favorite. And I was one of those kids who, you might already be able to tell, I talked a lot.
You're kidding.
So I got straight A's, but I was never in the National Honor Society because I got unsatisfactory conduct for
Yeah.
talking too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't do what I was told much either. Yeah.
Well, as a preacher's kid, you kind of learn not to, right? Because your parents are never there
Right.
to corral you. So I always got away with murder
Yeah. My
and
biggest
really enjoyed
problem
it.
was I wanted to be outside. I didn't want to be
Uh-huh.
I didn't want to be inside. I was that kid that sat and
Yeah.
stared out at the play equipment, outside, because that's where I wanted to be.
Mhm.
There.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that was my biggest challenge was, and apparently that is rebellion. And apparently that is, not doing as you're told and not playing well with others. And, they came up with all kinds
Mhm.
of wonderful things. So to tell you that parent teacher conferences were an adventure for me is an understatement. Yeah.
Well, my mother never went to one, so I
Yeah.
could do whatever I wanted. It didn't matter.
My parents would go and then they'd just walk out and just shake their head. It's just, here we go again. So eventually they got programmed, right? They were prepared. So they just knew that they
Yeah.
were going to walk in and be disappointed. And they just they just kind of, they just they dealt with it. And they survived my childhood, which is really impressive. If people
That is impressive that they
people that
survived your
know me are
childhood.
thoroughly
Yeah.
impressed, surprised and thoroughly impressed. So
Mhm.
those poor people. So now I'm 57 and I've raised kids of my own, right? So, and growing up, I always knew I'd be a dad, and I always had this dream that I would go to my children would be the best behaved, they'd be the model citizens, that the teachers would do nothing but brag about them. I went to our son is our oldest, and we went to his very first parent teacher conference. He was in kindergarten, and we walked in and I said, "Lay it on me, teach. Tell me how great my kid is." And she goes, "Actually, Mr. Litton, your son is the most disruptive child we have in the entire class." And I sort of looked at her and I said, okay, wait a minute. We're talking about my son. His name's Mike. Do you have the right file? And she goes, "Mr. Litton, I promise you I have the right file." And I'm like, "So what's he doing?" And she said, "Well, he's fine until it's time to get up and get into single file line. He wants to be the class clown. He wants to crack jokes. He wants to be and I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, it's very important to me that you and I don't have any daylight between us. So he needs to know that I'm supporting you 100%. So here's the thing. He's always talking about how I have two telephones. At the time, I carried two cell phones. I still do. But
Wow.
I would use two phones at a time to close deals. I had a very large real estate company at the time, a very large mortgage company that I owned, and I had a lot going on. And so it was nothing new for me to stand and have two phones on and be closing deals. And so I told her, I said, we're gonna go home and we're gonna tell him that you put me on speed dial. And the next time he gets off out of line, I want you to walk up to him before you punish him and whisper in his ear, would you like to go to my desk and use my phone and call your dad and tell him how you're acting right now? And I said, let's see how that works. The very next day he got out of line, she walked up to him, whispered that in his ear. She never had to talk to him again.
Wow,
He
that's
never had to
amazing.
say another thing because that kid knew that I answer my phone.
Yeah.
I went home and told him, I said, I have her back. So if she calls me, you're going to deal with me when you get home. Is that what you want? Oh, no. No, Dad, that's not what I want. Okay. Those are your options, right?
Yeah.
Got right back in line. She never had to punish him.
Yeah. You knew
Just
what
the
would
thought
work. That's
of
great.
having to talk with me. You know how painful it is. We've been together now a couple of minutes. You know how painful it is, right? The idea of having to sit with me and talk with me about how he was acting was way more of a deterrent than anything else.
I love that.
No,
That's
well,
great. Yeah.
So English is your favorite subject at McClure. You graduate from McClure. Then where do you go?
So I talked to, I would talk to my mom and I would say, so, it's time to pick a college.
Yeah.
And she goes, and I quote, who do you think you are? You're not going to college.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I don't know how McClure is now, but at that time, there were 800 kids in my graduating class. It was huge.
Good size. Good size.
And they did not have enough. Yeah, they did not have enough anybody to really support you. So there was nobody to talk to me about scholarships or anything like that. So I found out about, and you're going to love the name of this, a secretarial school called Miss Hickey's Secretarial School.
That sounds like Ferguson, Missouri to me. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to Miss Hickey's.
That's right. And it was really the best. It was really very well known as the best secretarial school.
If you knew Miss Hickey the way I know Miss Hickey. Okay.
And it only took 9 months to graduate, and you were pretty much guaranteed placement if you graduated from there. So I figured out how to get a scholarship there.
Yeah.
The only thing that I didn't get a scholarship for was books. And it was going to cost me, this was 1974. Okay. So the books were going to cost me $200.
Oof.
And yeah. And my mom said, nope, not giving you $200. So I called my grandma and I said, Grandma, this is what I want to do. I need $200. And she had been saving her quarters. Do you remember the quarters that you could put in like little slots? And you'd save them. There were little books, almost like green stamp kind of books.
Yep, I had one.
Yeah, she had been
one. I
saving
filled it up and I took it into the bank and I made a deposit. I remember that. And I was probably in the early 70s. I was probably right about that time. I was 10 years old. No, I was 8 years old at that time. Yeah, in 74.
Yeah.
I was 8.
Yeah. So she gave me those quarters and I paid for my books and I did pay her back as quickly as possible.
Did she have $200 in quarters?
She did.
Bless her heart.
Yeah. Her husband, my grandfather, was a veteran of I don't know, Korean War, I think it was. And when he came back, he was, like many men who come back from war, they're a different person. And he had been an alcoholic and he was not a good husband. So she couldn't rely on him for anything. So she never worked. She never drove a car. She never did anything. But be a housewife and a mother and grandma. But she saved those quarters and she gave those to me and it got me through Miss Hickey School. And I got a job right at, a really good job taking shorthand, and typing. And I still can type 110 words a minute. Wow. I can no longer take shorthand because, of course, I haven't been practicing, but I type really fast. And so I got a
like
job.
A foreign language.
It is. It was really,
it really
fun.
Is.
Mm-hmm. So I got a job as a secretary, and I rode the bus from Ferguson to downtown St. Louis because that's where I got the job, was downtown St. Louis, because that's where the good jobs were.
That's where they are.
And as my shy self, no, not shy at all, I got to know everybody on the bus. We'd have parties and stuff. And I met a man who became my first husband. And he was working at the phone company. And he said, you should come work at the phone company. You can make a lot more money.
Oh, wow.
So I went and applied and got a job at that time it was called Southwestern Bell Telephone, downtown St. Louis.
We used to
And
have
started there
Southwestern Bell in Oklahoma.
There you go. So
They used to be our phone carrier.
Started there in 1977. And they had a really good education package where they would pay for all of your schooling, college schooling, if you went to college.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.